All
Very
right.
long
It's
introduction.
nice, right? Welcome. Welcome to Mise-En-Scene Weekly. My name is Steven. I am joined by my co-host, Jonathan. And this is a podcast where we
That's
discuss
right.
films. So just wanted to say welcome. Thanks for joining our podcast, listeners. This podcast is a movie podcast where we discuss two movies based on a topic. And we basically have to defend those movies and give points to why our movie is better than the other one.
And
Jonathan.
eventually, we may have a guest here and there. And so far, it's been very difficult finding some that actually want to put forth the effort into A, watching two movies in 1 week, and then B, having to interact with these two fools that you're interacting with
Well,
now or seeing
put
now.
to a
It's been
point to
difficult,
that.
but
A point to that is
sure.
I don't think that the person or the jury has to watch any of the movies. They could go in blind, and we just
Fair,
describe.
but they should. Yeah, they
I
should.
mean, I mean, they
I
don't
mean,
have
we're already
to.
in disagree. I think they should. I mean, this is kind of like, let's go all the way back 20 years ago. I was thinking about this when our disagreements started to exist. And I think when we were at the 2003 Warp Tour, and that I don't even know what to call it, but it was definitely a parking lot. And you decided that you wanted to go see Motion City Soundtrack. And I was like, I've got to go see Saves the Day. Peace out. And, or it may not even been Saves the Day at that point, but I did not go see Motion City Soundtrack with you. But I am on fire today.
Oh,
So there's that.
I'm
Yeah.
on fire too, and you missed a great show, by the way, because from my
Yeah.
recollection, it was fantastic in a sweltering
Nobody
parking lot.
recollects anything from the Warp Tour of any capacity. So I don't believe that you recollect.
2004. Right.
Was it four?
So
I think it was three, but nonetheless. Yeah.
yeah, whatever.
It may have been four,
Uh,
actually.
but yeah, well, like I said, I feel like if we do get a jury, that would be a big commitment for them to watch two films. They can just hear arguments and go from there. You know what I mean? That's the whole point.
Yeah. I mean, that's one option. There's always
One
a
option.
second and third. Yeah.
All right. So today's episode, what are we discussing?
So we are going to pit two movies, as we call twist endings, is the name of this podcast episode, and twist endings being movies that, to be frank, we didn't want to just choose The Sixth Sense and kind of go from there. Movies that A, would challenge us to some extent, and B, how relaxed I am with not even turning on my lighting, but pit them against each other, but try to be a little bit creative. So I chose for Steven a movie that is dear to my heart, but I haven't seen in a long period of time, and one which I actually did want to watch recently, and the same vice versa goes for you. But why don't you explain what you think is best about your movie and why you chose it?
Well, okay. So the movie that Jonathan picked for me was a movie that it's everybody knows it. I'm going to just go ahead and say it. It's Planet of the Apes. But funny enough, I had never seen the original Planet of the Apes. This was my first watch of this movie.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'll go into my discussion of the movie soon. But it was, I mean, I had a blast with it. And I've seen the Tim Burton remake or the follow up or whatever, and then I've seen the newer ones with Andy Serkis and the
Yeah.
CGI and everything like that, and those are a lot of fun. But this one really captivated me, and I enjoyed it immensely. What about your movie?
So I received very politely the Wicker Man or Wicker Man, which I believe there was a remake, which I haven't seen in like 2006. Maybe this was a Nicolas Cage flick. I
Yeah, it
actually
was
don't know
Nicolas
much about
Cage.
the remake of it, but I heard it's pretty terrible. But with that said, I mean Wicker Man. Not to get into the details already, but the premise behind it, if you don't already know, I guess I can give a quick little snapshot. Is a Sergeant Howie, goes to a nice, lovely, or so it seems, island to research as best as he can as a sergeant the case of a missing child, or so he thinks. Not to get into spoilers yet, but I guess the big forewarning here: this is a movie podcast. Also, I don't think we should have spoiler alerts for 1968 and
Yeah, it's
70
been 50
movies.
years.
But if you haven't seen it, that's your bad. I don't know what to say.
Exactly.
And I shouldn't have a spoiler alert, even apology. But yeah, so we have Wicker Man pitting against Planet of the Apes. I as well. I haven't seen either of these movies in a long period of time.
But you
I
have
have seen both though.
you had
I've
seen
seen
both.
both.
Okay,
Yeah, I've seen both.
good. Well,
Um,
this was a first watch for me with the Wicker Man as well. So it was
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It
All
was
right. Let's first. I mean, we should have started with our main premise to get us started here. Right? Is I think the exact wording might be different in your prognostications of what we should be doing in a podcast here and there. But would you rather? So my question to you after you sent me a message about right before this, how you needed to finish your Chipotle, which I don't know if that was a joke or your sarcasm, like just bubbling through before we have this debate on a podcast. But my thought was, would you rather eat Chipotle every day for the rest of your life or kill yourself right now?
oh wow.
I was just thinking, yeah,
That's a tough conundrum right there, considering I
yeah,
just ate Chipotle and I might die from it. So
yeah. I think you might. I mean, have you used your Chipotle away spray?
oh no, I can I get that on
Mm.
Amazon? Is it
Yeah, it's a South Park centered
okay?
uh, joke slash. There probably does exist a a version of it somewhere, but you should watch the episode. It's very fun,
I
entertaining,
will. I will.
and just as
That's
a forewarning, you know this. I just got done with a 6 mile tempo run for all the 6 runners who are going to watch this out there, including us.
nice.
So I'm still coming down off being hot. So anyway, Wicker Man versus Planet of the Apes. Who wants to go first? I went first last week, which seemingly is an episode that maybe you don't want to drop, but nonetheless, I would love to have a bonus material out there somewhere. But I went first, so why don't you go first this
I
time?
can go first. So, like I said, I had Planet of the Apes. I'm going to just start with this real quick.
Todd. Man has no understanding. He can be taught a few simple tricks, nothing more. I'm
So, Planet of the Apes is a science fiction movie that came out in 1968. It follows these three astronauts that crash land on a distant planet. They were in a spaceship for quite a while. They even had to go into sleep chambers to dilute time as they traveled across the universe. And they crash land on this planet, and you have the lead actor Charlton Heston leads this group of astronauts across cavernous deserts and what have you, and you're kind of on this planet with them, and they're trying to figure out what's going on, where they are, when they are, and they find, well, first we see they jump into a lake and they swim around, and their clothes start getting taken. And when I first saw this, I was like, "Oh, those are the apes. The apes are stealing their clothes, but why?" And later you find out they kind of go out, and it's a bunch of humans. They look like prehistoric humans that have stolen the clothes, and they're in the fields. And all of a sudden, you hear the soundtrack come on, and that's when you get the money shot of these apes on horses running after them, chasing them,
Great
hurting
shot.
them. Yeah, it's a great shot. It's a great shot.
Great shot.
And
Great
it was
background.
and then you find out they are on the planet of the apes, and these astronauts get mixed in with these humans that are, sub, I guess, the subhuman of the apes. They're in captivity, and it's they get captured, and it's a whole adventure with, or yeah, Charlton Heston gets captured. He gets shot in the throat, and he can't speak. I was so surprised at that
Crucial part.
crucial part. He
Crucial element.
because
Yeah.
yeah, because the humans on that planet, they're not very
Ironically,
intelligent.
speak English.
Yes, yeah,
Still, I mean, it has been 2031 years to be specific, but I found it interesting that they still spoke English. But then, if you think about 2,000 years ago, we also still spoke English here.
that's true. That's true. Um, But also, to a matter of fact, if you don't know the twist ending and stuff like that, they're on a distant planet and these creatures speak English and write English perfectly. But I guess, science fiction in 1968, you can suspend your disbelief a little bit on that accord.
Yeah. My
Um,
not I was hoping just to chime in from time
oh,
to time
chime
here.
in. Yeah,
This is
absolutely.
what this should be. I love not to get into the debate just yet or whatever it might be, but like I love this like decade or even like multiple decades, even before I would say probably sometime in the 80s, sound editing became a little more hypersensitive to where things were matching up a little better. But I love, for both of these movies, I love the fact, and one of my favorite movies, The Holy Mountain, which is Alejandro Jodorowsky, is tattooed on my arm in the same time period. They, for whatever it's worth, and you could probably do the production value and the production quality or lack thereof, I love how nothing matches up. So you have like a horse visually, horse hoof like hitting the ground, or you think it's hitting the ground, and then like clearly a half second later the sound hits your ears,
Yeah.
and I love it. I honestly really truly enjoy or have enjoyed both movies in the time period because I've been watching, to be honest, frequently watching The Office, where the sound is impeccably done, and then every movie now is like to a T. I like it and enjoy it when I would prefer actually if some movies were to kind of go back to that
It's a
kind
little
of like
rough
a
around the
sarcasm.
edges. Well,
It's nice.
yes. Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
Um, I mean, the movie, it was made in 1968. Sci-fi was coming off of a decade where everything was super campy, invaders from outer
Yeah,
space and things like that. But recently, that came out right before this was 2001: A Space Odyssey, which kind of just blew people's minds, right? And then this comes out right after that, so people are a little bit more willing to give sci-fi movies a chance in the mainstream and also the intellectual debate of like, what does this mean? Which I think Planet of the
yeah.
Apes has a lot to say about that. Um, but
Also, the
as
sociological like moments here of like Vietnam and just the sociological. I mean, this is a year before the Manson murders, for example. A lot was going on, a lot in the country. So having a movie like this and being dropped in the middle of, after 2001, contrary to what I just said previous about audio not really matching up, I mean, that movie is about as impeccable as you can possibly have.
it's Kubrick.
Not
I mean,
only,
what
not only like scientifically of like, even like Neil deGrasse Tyson would be like, yeah, kind of did his homework on that one.
checks out.
Whereas Planet of the Apes, Neil deGrasse Tyson is like, eh, they're not going to be jumping into the lake water immediately
Yeah.
without checking it, would they? Oh, they did. Oh, wow. And then, oh, look at the size of their boat. Oh, that's interesting. It's going to fit 3 people.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Um,
fascinating time period to drop this movie, I would say.
Also, people were very still kind of worried about the bomb and mankind destroying itself was very prevalent in what this movie was about, the overall theme. So all of those kind of things add up to the time period when people saw it, and it just made it that much greater. But anyways, moving forward with the plot, Charlton Heston gets captured. He can't speak. He gets put in a cage like an animal. There's also another human in a cage that's very beautiful.
She's
That
very attractive. I
yeah,
didn't know how, I totally forgot how attractive she was.
yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
But he's in a cage, and the funny thing is there's this ape society. You have um, you know. Structures of government and science and things like that, and the scientific ape really wants to discover to discover bright eyes is what she calls them, bright eyes,
Yeah.
and he's trying to communicate, and it's just a great tension, and overall as a moviegoer you're like, I just if he can just speak and tell him who he is, and then he
Yeah.
does speak and he tells him who he is. Well, this is the first thing he says.
Ministry of Science.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
So that's not the best introduction you want to have with the dominant species of that planet. But he does get to get to have a a tribunal or a trial to tell him to convince the higher ups in the ape
The
planet.
judge, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that scene, from what I hear, is actually mostly ad libbed, and it's just they won that. It
Oh,
wasn't.
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was mostly a non-scripted event where people actually just kind of moved off each other,
I
which I
love
found
that.
interesting because it's a good scene.
It's great. It's great. And he tries to convince, he's like, I had a fellow astronaut that was with me. He was captured in the raid, and then they take him outside and show him the other astronaut. And he has got this big scar on his
Yeah,
head, and they're doing scientific research on him. They're trying to figure out what these guys know. And
yeah. A
there's
lot of
definitely.
serious implications that go back to our own history. Yeah,
Of course, and it was really, really enlightening to see, how they put these social, what was going on at the time in the '60s, with Martin Luther King and segregation, and you know
yeah,
what now they're flipping and they're putting a white man in a cage and they're spraying him with a hose, and it's just these images at that time had to just shock audiences, right? It had
yeah,
to be just kind of mind
yeah.
blowing. So um, but anyways, they or Charlton Heston escapes with the help of the scientist apes, and they go to the Forbidden Zone, and in that Forbidden Zone, they find a cave, and that's when the other apes come on and try and stop them, and they what they
Why don't we give some more back? Do you want to give some background about the Forbidden Zone? It's I don't know if you want to give a little more details on it, but imagine, as the name nomenclature is stated, the Forbidden Zone is kind of that area, and the best explanation I can think of immediately is like a Tarkovsky stalker film where there is literally a Forbidden Zone as well, and of which like there are guides who can guide you in and out of that zone. I think of it similarly like that, but this is more of a forbidden zone, and I don't want to get to the spoiler to ruin any debate you might be having here. But I found it interesting that not many people know about it. B, or not many people have gone there, I should say, or are fearful for whatever reason, as you can probably indicate, why that forbidden zone should not be seen or viewed
it kind of reminds
in
me
real
of the
life.
movie. It kind of reminds me of the movie The Village, where
Oh
don't
yeah,
go
perfect example.
don't go
Yeah,
deep into the forest. Well, the reason why they're telling you that is because you're going to find something out that we don't want you to know.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not necessarily dangerous. It's dangerous because the knowledge that you're going to get hit with is going to upend what we've tried to build as a society. And they don't want that.
Totally.
They want to keep them exactly where they are in that state. So but yeah, they go to the Forbidden Zone. They go into a cave. They find spectacles, dentures, a heart valve, and a baby doll, and all of these things that I was reading something that, especially like the glasses, the heart valve, the dentures, like all these things that are show that man is fragile, and that
Yeah,
he's not strong, and it was kind
because
of
we
that
all
was
need baby dolls
we all need baby dolls, yeah, to comfort
that
us.
still work after 2031 years, by the way.
Well,
Ironic.
it's like, yeah,
So
it's a
strange.
little sound box.
I was like,
Mommy.
how does this work after 2000 years? Like, come on. Like,
The-
especially now? Now? Like,
hey,
there's no way. I have so many dolls upstairs that don't work after 6 hours.
do you
I
have a
have
doll
books
for?
that.
Do you have a doll from 1965 that they made dolls better back then? You know what I mean?
Did they make dolls better in 2000 years ago, though? I
Well,
mean,
I
come
don't.
on. If you see
I
dolls,
can't.
they don't make
I
noises.
can't test that hypothesis, John. I don't have a time machine.
Let me go
So
back in my time machine that I bought from the Planet of the Apes guy down the street, and I'll let you know how that goes. How about that?
okay, all right. You let me know. Um, so he finally get to escape down the beach, and this whole shot, it's very drawn out, right? They're riding these
Yeah.
horses, him and Nova riding horses,
Is this
a
near the
horse.
Forbidden Zone
This is
at the
on the
moment?
Yeah, this is in the Forbidden. This is on the beach of the Forbidden
Okay,
Zone.
got it. Got
Yeah,
it.
but he wants to find out. He wants to find out what's going on, what planet he is on, and wants answers.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you have that final shot of he just kind of peers back, and you don't see the Statue of Liberty. You just see the crown.
Yeah.
And it's a high shot, and him on the beach, and there's no music. It's just the waves crashing on the ocean.
Yep.
And he gets down on his knees and he yells out, damn you all to hell. Now, is he yelling to the apes, or is he yelling to humankind of like, you had everything and you destroyed it.
Yep.
And now look what it is. And that twist, I mean, obviously I knew the twist going in because Planet of the Apes has been in our culture for a long time, but it still hit me really hard. And it still was profound because of the build up to it and the little breadcrumbs that they kind of sprinkled throughout. Like it was just, here's another breadcrumb at the beginning of the movie.
Yours. I can't help thinking somewhere in the universe there has to be something better than man. Has to be.
Yeah. And is there? I don't know. Maybe. But my favorite quote of the whole movie is "Human see, human do," which you were almost at that point of playing when you played I think the first clip or second clip. But the human for the monkey see, monkey do, but the human see, human do. I actually most of the lines that are humorous. I only found this out after, of course, doing this. Were written in and reshot, sometimes in Arizona, sometimes not, but like they were reshot to add humor to the film. And so I actually laughed hysterically. Like I actually thought Planet of the Apes was more of a comedy than anything, because when they were going through trying to find, I was hoping you would go a little more into detail about actually them being captured. I loved how not only did they just jump in the water, and the boat that they got on, the lifeboat, is barely fit. It's like the size of this desk. It's hilariously small. And then the cars in the 60s were the size of homes now. They were humongous. So they didn't think, hey, just do it like the boat, or do it like what we have at home kind of thing. Which is interesting.
They even had another astronaut, the only female, that died on the ship because the glass cracked. I mean, think about this. So they were going to put 4 people on that little lifeboat, and she was supposed to be the one to help populate. So she was basically...
Yeah, she was the one and only, basically.
Yeah. I mean, that's 1968 for you, I guess. You can't have...
The point is, I'm getting off topic already, but like I loved how the apes, because everything is they're devolving more or less, in the sense of like humans, we think we're anthropomorphizing also chimps. We used to be chimps, now we're chimps again, that's what we think may have happened, but maybe it's a sundry of things. But we've devolved effectively into chimps again. I don't know if that's possible. Science people that probably watch this are like, he's an idiot. Correct. But I love how they everything in the movie is kind of, I don't know if it's purposeful on the effort of the director, and how they found the humans to begin with. Not only them being the humans or the astronauts and humans that are there. They use these long canes with these like the sticks that came out. So it's like, imagine this long stick, and they're just like hitting the corn manually while they're like sprinting through, as well as riding horses through these I don't know what to call it, cornfields. And it looks so just antiquated to some extent, which I was just laughing hysterically. But before that happened, the astronauts, after they get out of the lake and their clothes were taken, I could not stop laughing as they saw the humans that couldn't speak English, who they have devolved into, I guess. And they're out in the open, standing up, watching them in a nearby field, very nearby, and are just like not going to take cover. And they're not going to be like, we should probably fucking hide because we don't know what's
outnumber
here.
us. Yeah.
We found a flower that's cool and all. Let's uproot this for whatever reason. Whatever happened to that flower, who knows? Also, there are 3 days of food on their backpacks. Strange. But nonetheless, I found it hilarious. They're like, hey, look at those humans doing human things like us. They didn't think like, we should probably watch them and observe them just for maybe a split second and try to understand.
Charlton Heston's character was very, I think he had a big ego, because what did he say? He's like, in 3 days we'll be running this place or whatever it was.
Yeah, immediately, immediately. But that's
We'll be
so
running.
Charlton Heston in like every movie.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just like he's a
I
man.
don't, and I don't think. I mean, there was a couple of other actors that were considered for the part, but I think having him as the lead was a perfect choice. Like I couldn't
Yeah,
like Marlon Brando was offered the part. I
yeah,
couldn't see it. It's got to be Charlton Heston, and he gave gravitas towards this movie with a bunch of actors in heavy makeup that could have been corny, but I mean the makeup was great.
yeah.
So I think Charlton Heston as the top billing was a perfect choice.
Yeah, I would agree. Surprisingly, I think the rating for this was G,
Oh
which
wow.
makes sense. But because I started thinking about it after watching Wicker Man first, and I was like, yeah, that makes a lot more sense considering the fact of all the ridiculousness that happened there. But overall, I mean, what were your thoughts even after coming in, knowing what's going to happen? I don't know if you know or have seen the. By the way, the Statue of Liberty actually is not, of course, digital. It's a matte painting,
Yeah, yeah, Matt Painting.
like the background of Star Wars when they actually like have drawn in all like the stormtroopers. Very similar, which I found extremely fascinating because anytime that actually happens, if you see, and they've done that in I think the Two Towers, Lord of the Rings, as well as in a ton of other movies. I always find it interesting when you see the images of them utilizing those paintings or pictures or drawings or whatever it might be, and like the backdrop of it, because like it's like this tall, and the way they
Yeah,
angle it, it's really cool. But like the way they shot it in '68, it actually looked terrific, I thought.
that was it was fantastic. Yeah,
But
and I
what
mean,
was your thought, like even coming in that moment of being like, holy shit, this is pretty powerful, or whatever you
I
thought.
I think what I got from it and what I thought at that moment, it was the build up because I really got immersed in the world that they created. It felt real. It the ape structures and the buildings and everything like that, and just like the world building was so good that it made you suspend your disbelief that yeah they crash landed on this planet that is run by apes, and you see that and you believe it and you kind of try and put yourself into the shoes of like I was a first time moviegoer but without knowing what the ending is, and
Yeah,
it still hits you pretty hard. I mean it's a powerful image, and what they chose as the image to be is the Statue of Liberty, right? What does that
yeah, it's
symbol
the
mean?
best choice. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's the best choice.
they could
Like,
have
what
done
else would
a
you choose? Yeah, the Eiffel Tower, but Statue of Liberty is more powerful in my view
100%. Yeah.
because
So
it's a human.
it's a human, what it represents, what
Hmm.
what it, what humans gave up because they're no longer the dominant species, so they don't have that liberty anymore. They're not in the land of the freedom. It's the land of the
Yeah,
apes, the planet of the apes.
yeah,
And it was a perfect allegory, perfect symbol, perfect ending to a movie. I bet, walking out of the theater in 1968, you just had to be like, "Oh my, what did I just see?"
yeah,
That was amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a. I mean, it's there's varieties of replicated movies being created now, probably still even in production. But what are your thoughts on the new? I don't know if we should go on to the next
Well,
slide.
I wanted to just bring up one more point that this movie
Yeah.
was primarily written by Rod Sterling, who was one of the
Yep.
creators and writers of The Twilight Zone, and
Yep.
this movie feels like just a magnum opus of what a Twilight Zone episode could be. And I don't know if you ever watched the Twilight Zone as a kid
I
growing
have.
up or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it had those beats and those feelings and those kind of twists that you kind of you like when you watch those episodes. So
There
that's
are
my
so many Twilight Zone shows. Like
oh yeah.
I think they actually recently got added either to Prime or Netflix, like about 5 years ago. And I remember thinking, I watched like four in a row, and I was like, I'm gonna watch all of them. And then I looked at like the Wikipedia. I was like, I'm done now.
They made
Like,
a
I
ton.
can't do this. This is not gonna
yeah.
work. But some of them are like, some of them are more or less somebody who got really, really high back in the day and was like, I'm just gonna to write this up. Your boy, your director here, probably just got mad high and came up with Planet of the Apes. I think that's what happened here, honestly, because
Well,
it's wild.
it was based on a book, the 1963
Yeah,
novel,
yeah.
that they adapted. But yeah, I mean, he took his own direction, and that wasn't the twist in the book. The book twist was quite different. That you couldn't really film because it had to be on paper. It couldn't be visual. So,
Statue of Liberty almost didn't exist. Actually, that scene.
oh really?
Yeah, that actually was added later. That wasn't going to happen. Now I don't have an answer of what actually was, but in my short amount of information that I have tried to review, that wasn't actually going to be the shot. I don't know what was going to be the shot.
I don't know.
But it's a good flick though.
Good flick. Good
What
flick.
would
All right,
you-
you're up.
Yeah, what would you rate it out of 10? We had to do it 1 out of 10. All right, is this like 1 Chipotle, 2 Chipotles? I mean,
Let's see.
or is it? Are we gonna do like a Rotten Tomatoes? How are we gonna? Or IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes? What do you want to choose here?
I would do a Rotten Tomatoes. That's more my speed.
Okay.
So percentage wise, it's definitely fresh. It's definitely in the upper 80s. I'd say that this movie is an 86% Steven Tomatoes.
You almost hit the. Isn't it 87% on Rotten Tomatoes? I mean, you could
Oh, I
have just
don't.
with the 80. You could have just gone with the 87.
I didn't look it. I didn't look it up.
Well,
Is it really?
let's say it's 86.8, and we have to round up, and you think it's an 87. Not to sway you in the direction of your own swaying. So I love Planet of the Apes. I mean, I'm the one who chose it for you, so there's that.
Yeah.
Very enjoyable. I found it hilarious. As somebody who was I have my master's in sociology. I found it extremely fascinating and interesting, especially if you give the backdrop to the time period for which it actually existed. 1968 was a very fascinating time. I mean, Woodstock the next year, and it was in the midst of very, very reputable and good movies as well as direction. But it tried its best to think of something new while also challenging, I guess, the notions of society at large in ways in which now they seem rather simplistic because we're comparing like audio is not matching up, or at least I am, and things are funny. But like things, if you really thought about it and asked people such as my mother when she watched it, who was also a sociology major back in college, but like very hyper focused on challenging, I guess, the notions of that we kind of hold true to ourselves and who we are as humans, generally speaking. Because, I mean, honestly, when you really think about it, we anthropomorphize everything, and it's so funny that like we came from chimps, and then the furthest we can get to is like chimps that are now back. The dominant force. It's like we can't even think that creatively. But anyway, I loved it. Give it a high grade myself, but we might as well go to my movie.
Yeah, it's your turn. Let's discuss, the kind of the plot of the Wicker Man.
Yeah, not to define how you even construct this or you want to go about this. I prefer, if you can, if you add any details or you want questions. If I don't know these things, then I'm not going to know them. But I would love your participation. So,
Of course.
Wicker Man. I don't want to say it's the first of its kind, but it's one of the first of its kind. It's completely, I don't want to poison the well either. I would say it's rewritten the genre of horror so much so that it's actually created its own subgenre of folk horror. And when this movie came out, for a variety of reasons, a lot of people actually did want it banned. Primarily Rod Stewart, who was the boyfriend at the time of Britt Eklund, who plays Willow. Strangely enough, in the movie, a lot of people actually have names of trees and or vegetables and fruits and things of that nature. But Rod was very upset because it actually, and I'm getting way off topic, took 13 hours to shoot the nude scene for which she is in. So he was very upset.
Where
that
she's dancing and banging the walls and
that's
trying
correct.
to
That's
seduce
13
through
hours.
plywood.
13 hours. So directed
It's
by
excessive.
Robin Hardy, yes, exactly. For 5 minutes, yes, it's excessive. Robin Hardy, it's his directorial debut. To be frank, I don't think
What a
in
debut.
my opinion, yeah, I don't think he's really done anything outside of the spectrum or guise of Wicker Man. I think it's kind of those one-hit wonder, came out of the door and was like, I'm good for life kind of thing. Tried to redo the Wicker Man later on, and I think it hit 11% on Rotten Tomatoes. But
Yeah, it's
98
not
minutes.
good.
Robin Hardy, 1970, a three. Some places 1974, but generally speaking, in the early 70s it came out. It's rated R for a ton of reasons, both on the murderous side, both on pretty
The
much
orgy side.
pretty much everything across the board of like in 1973 of like what things would make a movie R rated. You can pretty much add Wicker Man to that list. But it is folk horror. It got 90% of Rotten Tomatoes. It had a very low budget, about $500,000, of which, fun fact for you here, none was given or provided to Christopher Lee, who is the main, I would say, named actor. Directorial debut, and by the way, the box office for Planet of the Apes was I think 5.5 million. I don't know how
No,
much.
the cost of the movie was 5.5 million. The box office was over 30 million.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah,
Apologies.
yeah, they made their money.
But yeah, speaking of Wicker Man making money, it was about equal, 500 to 500, and that was that. Even not having to pay Christopher Lee. But in essence, as I said before, the introduction to the movie itself is it feels slow going, but it also seems to me at the time of watching it, and already had watched it before, but very imperfectly perfect. And that is like the best way I can explain it in the sense that everything here happens for a reason. Everything here is this fatalistic move toward, I don't want to say enlightenment, but whatever is going to happen feels like it's going to happen at
Or
every
Doom.
direction. Doom or fate, and the structure of it, the movie itself, both on the musical side and on a like cinematography, for example, is just creepy.
What I was surprised on my first watch about how
You watched it twice?
well my very first watch, how that this was a musical. I had no idea
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And it's not it's not the Singing in the Rain kind of musical where they bust out. It's all built into the scenes
The
in,
movie
in the movie
itself.
and the film. Yeah, and I thought that was really
Feeling.
interesting, and it adds this kind of creepiness, but like I said, world building to it as well, and that folk horror genre, and it was very 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 cool to see that.
Yeah, the composer is very similarly named than one of your favorite actors, Paul Giamatti. His name is Paul Giovanni, and
Ah,
he also kind of went out on top and was like, "I did Wicker Man, and we're done," like kind of thing. He looked
peace.
up, he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "I'm out." It's funny. This movie is just outside of Christopher Lee. Really, it's the director, the composer, and pretty much everyone besides Christopher Lee was like, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm affected, possibly." So, not to make light of the situation, but Sergeant Hoey, I think his first name is Neil, or Howie, I can't remember exactly.
Howie,
But
yeah.
he actually goes to this island where Rowan Morrison is a missing child, and I think it was 7 to 8 months prior, and essentially there was a letter written that came into the cops' office, and he wanted to look more into the details of why this child went missing. So he travels to the island via plane, which is a very crucial element later on in the film for a variety of reasons. But I guess we can get into the spoilers immediately. But he goes in search of this child and is completely dead set that the child is basically going to be sacrificed. And as he goes on throughout the entirety of this film, and at 16 minutes in, we have our first like nude scene where he walks out of a bar, and quite literally, there's in a graveyard, like of all places. How creepy can we possibly like make this immediately? In a graveyard, there's probably a dozen people just having sex and just looking at him being the sergeant and looking at themselves and
He's
looking at
not just
like, kind of,
he's not just a sergeant. He's deeply religious and Christianity, which I think plays a big part.
well, that's a major part of it. Not only is he a Christian, but he is a virgin, and so he
Mhm.
has yet to have sex with anyone. He's getting married to his fiance very shortly after. I don't remember the time period, but nudity at 16 minutes was the immediate thing. But the thing that I actually felt about the film initially was just the intonation and feeling of it. Like when he gets on the boat and the shot on the boat after he gets to the island and it's going with the waves.
Mhm.
I thought that was my, and I don't know if this is going to be our definition of like the moment where this film was already encapsulated, but it was early on for me where the feeling was set. And to me, it was like that waking life moment of this is it. Like I know what's going to happen, so maybe that aided to my understanding of it. But I look back and I was like, that was the moment for me where it was like this fate of the waves are
Mhm.
are just bringing us ultimately to the shore, and that shore is filled with rocks, and you're going to die. And that's where it put that feeling in me, and I think it would probably put that feeling in you of like something is about to happen, and it may
Oh,
not be
definitely.
something is going to happen eventually, and it's not going to be good from any perspective. And so I immediately noticed that. I mean, first of all, it had been like at least 15 to 20 years since I've seen the film, so I remembered almost nothing. My movie memory is like dog shit. But him exiting the bar and trying to interact with people to try to get information, everyone on the island is making his job incredibly hard. It's impossible for him to do his job, and so nobody is helping him. He finally sits down, stays at a hotel, kind of a hotel, effectively. And next door to him is Britt Ekland, who was a Swedish supermodel at the time, also the girlfriend to Rod Stewart, that Rod Stewart, who I was saying that basically he did not want this film to be released anywhere because she was doing weird
She,
things or
yeah.
interesting things, dancing and trying to chorus through musical. By the way, and I also thought it was a musical off the bat. It was like, and I have in my notes like musical, 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 musical. Like what is happening here?
Yeah.
But it was fascinating. So it sets the tone immediately off the bat, and it never relents. It always has that same energy. I would say towards the end, there's an escalation of that same feeling, but it's still the same feeling. And I think it goes hand in hand with who Howie is. So I don't want to get to the finale before getting, the legs to get there, but I almost need to get there just to provide exactly what I'm trying to say. But I felt like I don't know if you've ever seen Twin Peaks, but like the first episode of Twin Peaks of like that, like something's going to happen feel. That's how I kind of felt throughout the movie itself. But
This
ultimately, he
un,
goes throughout the yeah.
it was like this uneasiness the whole time, and like what you said with your waking life moment, when you're on a boat and it just keeps going back and forth, up and down. You feel uneasy. You feel motion sickness. You feel, that kind of like, what is happening? What's going on? And that, like that is the definition of that tone of the film, which is spot on. I mean, it was really, you're following this. I guess, is he the hero? I don't know, but you're following the sergeant, trying to find a missing girl, and at every stop he's not getting the answers that he needs or wants, and it's like the whole town is against him.
Yeah,
Is the whole town against
because
him?
they are,
Yeah.
'cause they are at this point, and the music is so infectious with feeling, kind of like Star Wars would be, I guess, to some extent. Not the best example, but like John Williams is able, in any of his movies, like in Jaws or whatever it might be, is able to give you a feeling, and I think this composer was able to match the feeling of what the director was trying to do with like how the audience should actually be affected when watching. And I think the music was jarred, at least for me, initially at 23 minutes when there's that jaw harp. I had to look this up to see what musical instrument it was, but it was like
Oh, yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. And I was like, I don't think I'd ever heard that before. And then I was like, was that in Deliverance? Because that may have been, but it was a separate thing. But I was like, that was the moment where things, after the nude scene first happened, it was 7 minutes later, it started to be like, okay, this has got legs of weirdness, but like what's actually going to happen? And then you're just like, mind's blown. I didn't know that was going to happen. But anyway,
Mhm.
time goes on and continues to go on in the same manner where, the Howie goes into to speak with the head teacher, and then the head teacher, who he's asking information for regarding the missing child, Rowan, and there's no information off the bat, and ask the children, who there's like a full classroom with one desk missing, I should add, and nobody is offering up information about the child. Well, it
So
comes down to it. Go ahead.
this is my waking life moment here,
Sure.
where he's in the classroom and he points to the empty desk, and
Right.
there's a girl sitting next to the desk. He opens it up, and what do you see?
Yeah.
A beetle
Yeah.
around a little
String.
nail.
Yeah. Yeah.
The little old beetle goes round and round, always the same way, you see, until it ends up right up tight to the nail. Poor old thing.
Poor old thing.
Just like Howie.
Yeah, exactly, just like
Yeah.
but also, and to that same respect, Howie is definitely that beetle, because he just keeps going round and round and round, and he's gonna end up, to meet his doom. But also, what do we see right before that scene is all of these kids around a maypole going round and round
Yeah.
and round. And it's
Yeah.
both of their, I guess, you have your paganism, you have your Christianity, and they're both very, they both believe these things so deeply.
Yeah.
Is that gonna end them up? Are they gonna have a famine next year? And what's gonna happen then?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
And the tree being the phallic symbol, which they enunciate to each other.
yes.
Which is interesting.
I did not have that lesson in third grade.
I had that in second. I went to
So-
private, so we had
Gotcha.
to get earlier. Also from Florida, so there's that. By the way,
sense.
I wanted to actually mention, randomly getting off track, but for a good reason. I actually did some slight review before providing you a movie, Planet of the Apes, but the triple times they actually mentioned Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Right, I forgot to bring that up, but I was for the listeners out there. I used to live in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I went to high school in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm not from Indiana, but I did live there for a while in my childhood. And to hear that Charlton Heston was from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and he mentioned it several times, that gave me a certain sense of joy, pride, and like, why did they choose Fort Wayne, Indiana out of all the places?
Yeah, I was like, I know one person from there ever.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it. It happens to be-
I'm surprised there's not like a big statue of like a big, gorilla
An
ape.
ape?
Yeah, and Fort Wayne, Indiana, just kind of saying, "Hey, this."
You got put on the map, right?
Right, exactly.
So what's
We need
famous
to build
about
one.
you guys? Well, Charlton Heston actually talked about us in Planet of the Apes, the original.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Stephen
Great.
Reagan is also from here, kind of.
yeah.
So anyway, interesting tidbit. But the movie goes on, and slowly but surely, the audience and through the director, who did a fantastic job of slowly moving, I guess, to use your metaphor, slowly ratcheting down what you think is actually going to happen to Howie, or to the child who happens to be missing. And his understanding is he is going to save her from sacrifice, because eventually he realizes that this island is nuts, and so this pagan ritual community, they're out of their minds, all of them. And people are just having sex in graveyards. People are allegedly killing each other. They bury bodies, which happen to have rabbits in them, as well as taking the skin
Hairs. It's a hair.
and adding it to trees, and that each tree is basically associated with a human that has passed away. So everything is, to him, very different than his Christian upbringing. And keep in mind, he is a virgin, and he's not wildly religious in the sense of like you can see it on screen, but it's very prevalent throughout the entirety of the movie itself. And I guess ultimately it continues on this notion where he realizes and sees a picture of Rowan, and which was actually a crucial element in choosing him, as the community has, choosing him and the person he is. He's a virgin, he's a Christian, and a man.
He's an officer of the king.
and as well as the fact that he's able to produce pictures or develop pictures, which was one of the rules. Strange rule. I found odd that would be one of the rules that would satisfy their obligation to choosing the right person.
Hey, I don't understand paganism as much as Howie does. So
I guess not. But nonetheless, he gets to the point where he develops the picture, and as he developed the picture, it's kind of like the aha moment of what's actually happening. Rowan is in the picture. She existed, maybe still exists, and at least that's what he thinks. And there's going to be a sacrifice. Lastly, May Day is happening, which is the day that their celebration exists, in which they do all of their interactions with, their pagan gods and deities, I should say, in hopes that fruits of their labor actually result in fruits and vegetables and produce for the following.
for the harvest.
And so, in essence, he thinks that's the day that something is going to go down, that Rowan is going to be sacrificed to these deities. And so he actually, to get back up, goes into his plane. It's a water plane. And so as he hops on, the language from the person who rows his boat to drop him off into the plane is very crucial if you actually review it. And he was like, have you seen anyone messing with my plane? Basically, he goes, nope, I haven't seen anyone. And it's like, because I did it. It's really what he's trying to say. Like, no, didn't see anyone come by, but I did it. And so it's by that point, in that same moment, you have half the town in masks, in animal masks that are all peering over
So
this
creepy.
small embankment of I don't know what to call it, like a stone fence. And that's when the music is starting to set. And you're like, this is starting to get, like, what's going to happen? Like, this child is clearly going to be sacrificed. And then my thought, or twisted thought, I guess, to some extent, is like, is it going to work? Like, are they actually going to have, like, apples next year? Because, like, I looked up, Scotland is not, like, really renowned for apples. And, like, they're not very good with apples. And also, there's a scene in the bar earlier where he is being provided a tin fruit cup. Like, they're really, like, the director's, like, really trying to make it known of, like, hey,
there's no fresh produce.
we don't have anything here, guys. So I also found that, like, super fascinating. And ultimately, his plane doesn't work because old boy on the boat, affected it. And then he's like, hey, come back here, pick me up. Gets picked up, and then begins the process of figuring out the ending for himself. And at that moment, he still thinks he's not a fool. He's a Christian man trying to uphold the law, which to some extent, I guess he is. But the trap at that point was more or less set. And so ultimately he finds himself on land again, which wasn't far away from the ship, and follows a man who's in a costume, as everyone is dressing up for May Day, and follows him to this party, and then decides that for the husband of Willow, he is going to beat him up after he takes a quick nap, by the way, and with a severed hand waking him up that's lit on fire. Interesting little caveat. Takes that hand and smacks somebody in the face with it, which I found hilarious. And ultimately takes somebody's costume who has a mask and joins the crowd.
It's an important choice of the costume. Yeah.
Yeah, McGregor is the man's name, who's the husband to Willow. And yeah, the jester. And so the fool, yeah. And so he actually more or less has fulfilled his obligation to the island to be what they exactly thought he was going to be. And this is the moment where I think, looking back after knowing what actually happened, and I guess I can't get to the point, but I wonder how he was chosen. Because there's no delineation of, like, how, like, they don't have a plane. They don't have a plane to go to mainland to see who he is and research him and things of that nature. I found that interesting, of, like, or a plot gap that was like,
maybe it's
how many
something
versions do you know that are like 35 or whatever? I mean, he looks like he's 80. I'm sorry. He's like, say he's 30. He looks pretty old, and he's a virgin Christian. Maybe in 1973 there was more of these humans, but it's an interesting little tidbit. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Follows the man, knocks him out, ties him up, joins the crowd. They're on their merry way, dancing, singing. The music is creepy. but very, very eloquent. And they get to the point of a cliff. And in that cliff, they're having a ceremony to find out who's who to some extent, and who's, there's knives basically under your neck. And as I don't know the actual tradition itself of why they would be doing this, but they're cutting off each other's heads, and it's a scene. And so somebody goes one by one, and people are good. And McGregor, who is Sergeant Howie, gets in there, and you were thinking, is he going to get his head chopped off? I don't know.
I mean, I bet he wish. I would bet he wish he did at that point.
Looking back, and
looking
then
back.
he didn't get his head chopped off. But immediately after that, he finds Rowan tied up down near the cliff, lets her go. She seems like she's losing it, and he thinks he's just solved the biggest mystery on Earth. And everyone basically comes to him and says, "You're fucked," more or less. They're like, "You."
When she goes up,
fucked.
When she goes up and gives a hug to Christopher Reeve,
we're gonna tell you how fucked you are. And so, like, literally for the next 10 minutes, everyone is reiterating how stupid of a sergeant, who is supposed to be in effect like an intelligent journalist to some extent. And they literally tell him, "Yeah, you're going to die right here, right now. You are the fool," clearly a fool after doing all of this. And then this is where you go back to that boat of that fatalism. It's like, clearly this moment is, this feeling is intricated, not only in the music, it's not only intricate, like so intertwined in the music, the directing, but also just the feeling itself of watching everything unfold. And you're like, I frankly did not feel bad for Sergeant Howie. I was like, this is at this point, this is your bad. Sorry to say it, but
I didn't feel bad for him either. I felt like he was that beetle just going around, round, round, and he wound himself up. And he didn't have to, but he did it because he couldn't understand these pagans, these people. And he not necessarily wanted to, I mean, he did.
wanted to hurt them.
Well, he did want to influence them with his Christianity. By that one scene, he broke a couple sticks and made a cross and set it there.
Cross out of it. Yeah.
And even when he was, at the end, he's trying to yell Bible verses and things like that, and it just, it was a little too late.
He gets stabbed after a large man holds him, and the entirety of the crowd is basically just giddy. They're excited because his sacrificial lamb, which there also is sacrificial lamb in the Wicker Man, and what a spoiler alert, by the way, the poster of the movie itself is literally the Wicker Man on fire. And so, like, clearly you may not know what's actually going to happen, but pretty good intimation. So they put him, after being stabbed, into this large man-like creature that is made of wood that actually has lambs and other animals in it. And it's just straight kingling. And as prideful as he is, and as foolish also as he is, and Christian as he is, not to say that those three are together, but like, he is just belting out Bible verses. But he at first was like, no. And then he's like so prideful that he's like, I'm going to stop this. My Christianity is going to take precedent over your pagan rituals, and it's going to save me. And I found that to be the most foolish of the entirety of the movie itself for him. And lastly, I thought the Wicker Man itself, the actual on-fire structure, was hilarious because a fool always loses his head first, and the Wicker Man itself, when it burned, lost its head first, which makes sense because fire, right? And it lost its head, and I was like, I don't know if that was meant, but that was a pretty good nod to what they were trying to do. But I found the movie hilarious, but also extremely sentimentally creepy. Of just the game of the hunter now being the hunted, I found super fascinating, and it created two new genres. One, a folk horror, like where Midsummer would be the greatest explanation of like a follow-up movie to it, and also like it influenced even music to today. Like Radiohead is highly influenced by the Wicker Man, as well as just the genre of like psychedelic folk to begin with. It actually started like a new subgenre too there. So it actually created just a lot of like new ideas, I would say, which is, it's rare. But I feel like he was the opposite of, like, in the Odyssey with the sirens. He just didn't tie himself to a pole. Like, he needed to tie himself to a pole, and he just didn't. And he had every available chance to do so, and he never did. He always looked the other way and was just like, Christianity is going to win the day, and I'm going to find him. And then
Now, would you consider this a horror movie or a thriller? I'm kind of not on the horror fence.
I don't think it's a thriller. A thriller would be like
Or not a thriller, like a mystery.
Pelican Brief.
I'm thinking mystery.
Horror. I mean, since it's everyday life for these individuals, I wouldn't say necessarily it's a horror, but like, what is Texas Chainsaw Massacre if that's like your everyday life as well? Or like, what is like, it's the second time I'm bringing up Charles Manson, but like reading a book called Chaos, and the various law enforcement places or entities with Charles Manson. But like, I mean, is that horror? I mean, I would clearly say yes, but like, it is, it's their everyday life, and it's also their everyday life. Although it's, the morality of it is stretched very, very far, of killing an actual human. But if they think that's what should be done to help that entire community, and that person has been chosen, clearly, I mean, it's wrong. But is it horror? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it is just a thriller
or a mystery. But yeah, I mean, I was totally intrigued by this movie. I thought that the themes of Christianity versus paganism, and the kind of the outsider in this town, where everyone is against you.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to fool you. Everyone's not giving you. That adds a layer to, I guess, the horror of it, because to be in his shoes and not have anybody on your side, but people aren't being mean to you.
Yeah.
They're not. They're just guiding you along.
It's funny because, like, from a pagan perspective, he got to be God for a day. Like, he's now available to bring produce to the island. That may or may not happen. But yeah, I like the very end of the movie. It actually says it the best, I think, where it pans away, and like, you have just like this most horrific scene of this man just like burning to death and screaming, and just terrible, horrendous scene. After everything,
with people all around him, kind of holding hands in a "We Are the World" kind of,
just smiling and literally dancing, as if their goal was achieved. Because, like, if you really think about it, of everything that actually had to happen to get to that point to begin with, pretty monumental. I mean, so well done. Like, well done, Island. You did excellent in achieving your goal. And I'd be very curious to see by the director later, if there's some interviews, to see if, like, if it helped the produce of the island.
I don't know.
The harvest.
I mean, Christopher Lee said it best when he said,
"Come. It is time to keep your appointment with the Wicker Man."
And he kept his appointment.
Yeah. Boy, did he. Yeah, boy, did he. But I love the fact that he realized, at the very end, he actually realized, Sergeant Howie, he's like, yeah, that was pretty foolish. Yep. He's almost like congratulatory. He's like, well done. You guys tricked me very well. You can see he's just like, you psychopaths, but wow, that was, I don't know what to say. He's like dumbfounded.
I mean, because he's like the police will come in, they'll come to try to find me, and you'll all be arrested for murder. Yeah. And they're like, they won't find you.
Yeah, no. You think we went through all of this for them to find you? Right. So what's better?
Right.
What's the better?
That's a good question. I mean, when you sent me that message after we kind of watched the movies or whatever, and you said, like, it's like comparing these things, like one's like a Toy Story and one's like an Exorcist, and I kind of thought about that for the minute, and I'm like, well, you're kind of right. Like, I guess Planet of the Apes would be this, a little bit more mass appeal. It spun off a bunch of sequels. It had, it was a little bit more family friendly, whereas the Wicker Man is It's a little scary. It's horrific. It has a horrific ending. It's a little bit more. It's definitely more adult themes. So yeah, I like that comparison there. But I also found the two movies in a way, at least in like kind of the setup, very similar. You have Charlton Heston, you know, crash landing in water into a form of, a different land. You have this police officer landing in water, going to this different land of the unknown, and you follow their adventure into this big unraveling mystery of what's going on. Do you know what I mean? Like it had that
Yeah.
very, very kind of similar setup, very different story and themes and everything like that.
Yeah.
But it was kind of cool watching them back to back in a double showing that way.
I mean, that's how I watched it. I watched Wicker Man and immediately after watched Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I
Not
did reverse order.
the same day.
Yeah.
Took weird, strange notes for that matter. Some of which they didn't make sense at all. Like I think one of my notes for Planet of the Apes, I believe, which it just has to be read because it's just like so absurdly ridiculous. Is you will always learn from the crazies if you're able to listen through the loudspeakers and into the music. And I still have no idea what that means, but if anyone does, feel free to let me know what I meant in this random moment. But you got so what? I mean, what's better? I mean, this is where I guess would be crucial. I think they're extremely distinct movies. But after watching both, for me, and like reviewing both and how other critics and people, articles were written about them and music was written about it. Initially I thought Planet of the Apes was like far and away a better movie, like generally across the board. But there was like, I don't know, I love the plot holes in both. But I felt like Planet of the Apes was it was just a hilarious like letdown to some extent, in the sense of it was just funny. Whereas I wanted it to be a little more serious, but in 1968, I don't think you could probably maybe be as serious as you wanted to how well done are the costumes going to be back then?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, so I watched a documentary this morning called Making Apes, is like making of the Planet of the Apes, and it was basically all about the makeup that went into making the film, and it's the most a film has ever spent to this day, inflated dollars on the makeup process. Basically, John Chambers was the head makeup artist. He started his career in Chicago, not in film, but he would help World War II veterans who, lost pieces of limbs or pieces of their face, and he would help build, something that would cover that up. And he's like, hey, I could apply this to, my interest in movies in Hollywood. And it was the perfect.
Your face.
My face.
Yeah.
But he went to Hollywood. He joined up, and he was highly sought after for these special effects makeup, and it was very, very intense on how they had to apply the makeup every single day. And he was the first person to ever win an Oscar. They didn't even have a makeup category in 1969. They basically gave him an honorary Oscar for makeup because it was that important. It was, I mean, basically in this documentary, they said what sound was to silent film, makeup was to, the Planet of the Apes. Like moving forward, it just changed the game. And that impact is huge. Obviously by today's standards, it doesn't look. I mean, we're in the world of CGI and things like that, but as a practical effect, and like I said, I was immersed in that world. I think when judging these movies, we can judge, script, we can judge makeup, we judge acting, but I think in this episode we have to judge the twist, right? Yeah. Which was the bigger twist, and I think sitting in a theater in 1968 and seeing that this whole time we were on Earth, it just blows my mind.
Yeah, the scene with the Statue of Liberty, which is precisely why I chose this, is mind blowing. It's wild to think that Charlton Heston, like at the time, like I also thought was funny, like in his reaction, it was just pretty funny, like just pounding
It's
sand,
a little overboard,
pounding sand, which was just, I don't know, the
heavy-handed, I
that
guess.
was not lost on me. But I do think that the influence, and I have to always go back to the repetition of it. And while I think cinematography, I was far superior in Planet of the Apes, but I think the impact of Wicker Man was far superior for a variety of reasons, not influentially to create new genres, but any replication of that is outside of Midsummer, which is a vastly different film. It really hasn't been replicated since, so it's really a one of a one. And I think Planet of the Apes is easily, like, you can make 1,000 of them. And I'm not saying that dilutes the 1968 version, and I'm just speaking to general sense of the reception of a film. But the fact of the matter is, in terms of a twist ending, I would say objectively Wicker Man is less of a twist because I felt it coming, even though I had seen the movie before. And the moment, and to me, there was no intimation in Planet of the Apes that this was like Earth in any capacity. Although there were a lot of input throughout the movie, such as
there's breadcrumbs,
Orion and things of that nature. But like, unless you're like extremely astute to understand the stars and where you were, which by the way, I think there were actually planes in the sky, but which is hilarious. I think in terms of a twist, an actual twist, Planet of the Apes was a bigger twist to me, seeing the Statue of Liberty. Overall, after watching it, I think the influential impact of Wicker Man is to me, as a human watching films, is greater. But I think to society at large, if you actually talk to people who were around and watched that film when it came out, it was massively impactful to them. And not 100%. Only sociological ways, but like mind-blowing ways of, I did not know this type of movie could ever exist. Like, full stop. And I think that's separate in and of itself, and this is more of my own opinion, but I do think Wicker Man, if I had to watch something again, I would watch Wicker Man. Primarily because I just thought Planet of the Apes was like hysterical. It was just so funny. Some of the, like the prodding, for example, when they're like locked away and like chimp jails a zoo, and they're like treating humans as they would do a chimp in a zoo, and it's just like, this is so funny. But in terms of like twist ending, I would say Planet of the Apes. And next time I'm going to give you something that's more difficult. I think immediately was like, old boy, I'm going to do, and then you're like, you shouldn't do your favorite movies. And I was like, well, it'd be fun to talk about.
I think not right off the bat. I think we got to build to that, because I think we got to figure out this format, and I feel like we got to get our footing a little bit before we dive into some of our things that are really near and dear to our heart. I think it'll
like
just
twist endings and guilty pleasure movies, dear and dear to our heart. Anyway, this has been fun. Next time we need a guest, but that's if anyone wants to, I was thinking, and we should probably at some point cut this off. I was thinking that if we can't find a guest, we can have a special AI guest, and we can train that AI guest to actually choose, we can guide it to be like, what's a better twist ending movie between Planet of the Apes and Wicker Man? And then would be shown.
We got it. Now we got to get real guests. The AI, it's going to be, it could be partial to you or something like that. If you, feed it certain things. I don't know about
that. That's absurd. That is ridiculous. Well, this has been fun. Until next week. And I guess, do we discuss next week's episode at all, or do we just sign off from here?
Yeah. So stay tuned for next week, dear listeners. We are going to be
dear listener.
We're going to be discussing guilty pleasures. This time, though, there's a twist. I am not giving Jonathan a film. He is not giving me a film. We are choosing our own guilty pleasures. And we will discuss and elaborate more on those movies. You can follow us on our socials at sceneweekly.com, Scene Weekly, and we will post a couple of those movies that we'll be talking about. Stay tuned.
And if you have comments, questions, you can email us at admin@sceneweekly.com, but you can also just message us on all social media platforms outside of Facebook, strangely. Somebody needs to create that, dear listener. Mom, get on that, please. Anyway, till next time.
All right, I'm gonna play some outro music.
Ministry of Science.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!